Who knows that song? Who sang that song? The Queen. Okay, I'm a little nervous. All about love, all about grandma. Who is that person in your life who embodies love, wisdom, elegance, grace? I believe they are grandmothers. Let me tell you about mine. You still have your grandparents in your life? Friends would ask me. It didn't occur to me that aging is a privilege. At this big old age of 32, grandparents start to feel like a rarity, a pastime, ancestors. So when I speak about one of my grandparents, my grandmother, Deborah Ann Taylor Ford, immediately comes to mind. Let me say her name again. Deborah Ann Taylor Ford. Her melanin skin never ashy and always moisturized, or how she kept her toenails painted in the deepest red, rubbing her ankles together whenever she reached that utmost comfort. I know y'all know what I'm talking about. And I can't forget her smile, her teeth. She would be the first to tell you that she never left anywhere without her retainers and that good old Colgate. The way she carried herself will always stay with me. I remember this one time, I must have been 12 or 13 years old, in my grandma's kitchen, and she was getting ready to straighten my hair. At that age, I only wore my hair in braids or straight, no in between. Look at all that hair, she'd say, and proceed to place the hot cone on the stove, heated to sizzle temperature. I could smell it now. What really got me was how she was always prepared for my tenderheadedness, with those plastic ear covers slipping on for protection as a form of love. Some of my favorite memories are with my grandma. Annual family reunions, sometimes twice a year, visiting both sides of her family, the Love and the Taylor side. From Louisiana to Mississippi, Dayton, Ohio, Georgia, and beyond, we traveled everywhere together. Cue the matching t-shirts, freshly braided hair, electric sliding in unison, smoky smell of barbecue ribs in the park, and saying grace to bless the food that nourished our bodies. On one of our family reunion trips when I was about 10 years old, we stayed at the Marriott Hotel and had a pool day with the cousins. Little old me went to go grab a snack from the vending machine, a little something sweet, and I chose an Almond Joy, the perfect combination of sweet chocolate, creamy coconut, and the crunch of a single almond. Unwrapping the Almond Joy to take my first bite, I was met with a long string of hair sticking out the other side of the candy bar. I was grossed out. Ugh. I ran to find my grandma immediately to show her the audacity. And what did she do? Treat it like a crime. Oh, hell no, not on my watch, I heard her say. Or her favorite phrase, I'ma mess them up. She snapped photos, spoke to the hotel management staff, and even messaged the vending machine company threatening to sue them. Because one thing about her, she was gonna sue somebody and likely win. And another thing about her, when it came to family, she never played games. Love. Fast forward to 2023, it's wintertime in New York, and cuffing season is here. Yet I'm newly single and open to dating again. I was in a car headed to a first date in Flatbush when my grandma called me. Did I dare tell her how I met this man? I did. And she said, "What is a hinge?" Dating apps aside, she was curious to hear about this man. So I promised to call her the next day, and I did. Reflecting on a great first date, I told her how I was pondering something my date shared with me. He stated how he was intrigued by me and trying to figure me out. "What's going on in that head of yours?" he said. And to that, my grandma told me, "Well, what if you're not meant to be figured out? How about that?" She was so serious and protective in that moment. I find myself returning to this from time to time and thinking about the wisdom there. Love. All these memories, whether vivid, profound, hilarious, or simple, could not prepare me for the waves of grief that would crash into me day after day following my grandma's transition from this earth. In most of our recent phone calls, I'd share with her how I was anticipating grief and my fear of losing someone in our immediate family, an unfamiliar feeling. Yet, she was familiar with death. It was no stranger to her, which I believe is how she was able to speak about the possibility of death with such ease and softness. "I've lived a good life," she'd tell me, "and when it's my time to go, it's my time." Is it ironic that, like love, the organ in her body experiencing the most pain also started with the letter L? I think about this often. When I miss her voice, I thank technology for getting one thing right: voicemails. Yep, that's right. After living in New York for 3 years, my collection of voicemails is a precious gift for which I am grateful. Scrolling back through my phone, I land on one and hit play.
"Hey, sweetie, Grandma, love you and hope you're safe and warm. So I just called to check in on you, and I hope everything's going good. Know that I love you, and you can call me back whenever you get a chance, whenever you're free. Love you. Bye."
Love, like her mother's maiden name, is the sound of her voice. Bell Hooks says the way we grieve is informed by whether we know love. And death becomes then not an end of life, but a part of living. And I feel in many ways my aliveness is just that. Alive because I have become more familiar with death by knowing love. When it was time to celebrate her life at her funeral, I picked pieces from her closet, dressing down and looking good, exactly like she would, elegant and taking up space. Our family agreed that wearing all black did not embody her spirit, but rather rocking one of her favorite colors, purple. So I went to the store where she taught me how to shop for the best deals, Macy's. I found a beautiful pastel lavender floral dress that I rocked with a black shawl around my shoulders, pinned with one of her many brooches, an iridescent pastel-colored butterfly pin. When it was time for me to go up to the podium, my dad and sisters followed me, moving in a unit as she always showed us. I stepped up to the mic and got ready to speak what I wrote for her. All about love, all about Grandma.
Hello, Kat. Thank you so much for joining us today for the after release craft interview. There was not a dry eye in the house after your story. We truly appreciate you for having the bravery, but also just the vulnerability in sharing your grandmother with us. And we have some questions that we're dying to get into today. And so thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes. So jumping right in, Kat, we want to know how you identify creatively. Do you claim the title writer, artist, storyteller?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been sitting with this a lot, and I'm really drawn to words like multi hyphenate, multifaceted, multidimensional. So I tend to include that in whatever I then preface with what I identify. And I feel like it also varies depending on who I'm talking to. But like multi hyphenate, creative, artist.
And what exists within those hyphens? Like, what sorts of creative practices are you drawn to?
Yeah. So storyteller, dancer, an auntie, an Aquarius. I also worked 9 to 5 tech. So I feel like that still follows me in different chapters of my life. And yeah.
Yeah.
How are you developing your voice in all of those creative mediums, Kat? From the storyteller lens to, we could go all the way to auntie. So how are you finding your voice in all of the creative endeavors that you're doing under that umbrella of multi hyphenate?
Yeah. I feel like as of lately, I've really been dabbling and exploring, and I like to relate it back to how I choose to wander. Like, I love wandering, I love stumbling into coffee shops or cool alleyways or things that I just didn't even know existed and are now coming up on my path. And maybe um, they are things that I'm now paying attention to, adding more energy to. So I think there was a past Cat where dance was like top priority back when I was living in Oakland. So I fell back in love with dance, for example, as an adult. And now I dance in heels pretty consistently. And that's one of the things that brings me joy. It's not anything I monetize or anything that I'm looking to make a career out of, but I feel like that has been one avenue that has been able to open me up to other areas, like being able to share about my grandma and tell her story, because I've been able to be very therapeutic with how I release through movement. And so, yeah, I really see them all connected for myself. And I think just different seasons bring up different moments where I might be adding more energy to one or the other.
Absolutely. Really interesting to think about the relationship between all of those practices. We're curious what you think the anatomy of a good story is.
Mm. I love stories that either start off or have some moments of audience interaction. And so, what I mean by that is either posing a question or asking for response back to whoever you're communicating with. Um, I find that that just opens up a realm for people to get a little bit more grounded with what's about to be said. And yeah, you kind of get that connection. And so I remember doing that live at the event. I started off with the Aretha Franklin song, and I was like, who here knows this song?
Mm-hmm.
And folks are just shouting it out, right? So that immediately helped me feel a little bit more comfortable on stage, just having that moment of interaction. So I would say that's one example, but then I think that there's layers of how you make someone feel. What is the word choice? How are you describing sensations? And yeah, I think as someone who this was one of the first times that I've written in a while in a way that I knew was going to be shared with people. It was pretty new to me. I didn't really follow a specific structure. I just kind of followed the feeling and how I wanted to honor my grandma's spirit.
No, that absolutely came through in how you told the story. I think the feeling itself, yes, it's beautifully written, but the feeling that you communicated was something that I think everyone watching, even our audience members that are going to get to see the story today, could feel. It was very visceral, even to everything, even to what you were wearing. So
Mhm.
it really shined through. What
Yeah.
is the function of honesty in your work, Kat?
I think for me, it ties back to vulnerability. I've found that in the moments where I lead with vulnerability is also where I can be the most honest. And as someone who is highly observant, who takes a little bit of extra time to process before I speak. Um, yeah, just being vulnerable and not being shy of like, what is the inner world happening within Kat right now? How can I feel comfortable saying that out loud? And oftentimes, like, I've been surprised by, okay, the moments that I choose to speak up, then how that's received by someone else and how they are then able to process in their own way. Oh, this relates to me in this way, or oh, I actually have a different experience. And so I really see it as like a portal opening up. And I felt that with the story I shared of my grandma, like the amount of people that came up to me after the fact and said, I cried, or that was such an incredible release. And I didn't cry on stage. I was surprised. But I think it was because I was sharing that with folks, releasing that, being vulnerable, and having that portal exchange, I think really helped. But I did cry the next morning. I was bawling like a baby.
Oh, I love this idea of a portal exchange. What has been your experience with sharing and releasing your work, like over time to now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's something that I I want to do more of, and I think when I think of more, I also think of enough, and I don't think I've lived in my enoughness yet. So when I even share, I want to share more. To me, I'm mindful of like, is that more in an excessive way? No, it's just really I want to feel grounded in feeling enough and feeling enough to share where I'm at. And I think, yeah, I'm just coming into that a little bit more. And I've lived in New York for 3 years now, and finding my footing here, finding like creative avenues like this where I can share my creative practice has been incredible. But yeah, I've definitely been very selective, and I've had friends be like, "Kat, like we want to hear more from you, or like we want to hear your voice. Like you have such an incredible voice, or we love when you dance." And I think I've led with sharing my movement, but more so still being sacred and guarded with other aspects of me.
So that totally makes sense of where discernment comes in with certain things. And
Discernment is a big, yeah, value of
yes,
mine.
and
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's, I think as we get older, it only strengthens of like, is this the space to do this, or are these the people to do this with, or maybe I do need to sit with this for a little bit more time.
Mhm.
So that's why we are very thankful to that you shared this specific part of yourself with us. Uh, with storytelling, Kat, what does your practice look like? Are you jotting down notes on the train? Are you waking up every morning and journaling? What does this specific creative practice look like for you?
Yeah, I have been practicing morning pages after reading The Artist's Way. Probably read it last summer. So I'm a year in now with actively practicing morning pages. And that's really unlocked in me just a different way of how I reflect, process, and also follow through on dreams and ideas and actions. Like I remember writing a few pages after one of the first craft and releases I went to, being like, I wanna submit one day. I wanna be a storyteller. And so yeah, journaling has been a big new part of my life. And then I love creating video stories. So I think the folks that know me and follow me on social media know me for being also a digital storyteller and how I'm able to craft stories in that way, whether it be adding voiceovers to things or just how I edit my videos. So I would love to practice that more. Um, but I think it is really interesting how this story came together, which I don't know if we'll dive into that in a later question, but yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, let's dive into that. What
Was the
was the process of you putting this piece together when thinking about the topic? Was your grandmother the first person that came to mind when you were thinking about love?
So my friend Paul, I asked him to be my accountability buddy. And I did that because I knew I was freshly grieving. I knew I was in a state where, just having that extra support from someone that knows me and I truly care about would help me get there. And so he was like, absolutely. And I was like, all right, I spoke this into the universe. Like, let's see what comes up. And yeah, I remember looking back on some of the pages that I wrote on the plane. And that just initially sparked some ideas on like, okay, I know I want to write about my grandma, but what exactly? And then I also looked back on, I wrote something for my grandma to share at her funeral. So all about love, all about grandma is actually like what I titled, what I read out loud at my grandma's funeral. I wrote like a quick, um, yeah, like a couple of sentences in her honor. And so, yeah, I was just really inspired by Bell Hooks' All About Love, which is how I landed that title. And just ruminating on that, I was like, okay, I feel like between what I wrote for the funeral, between what I wrote on the plane, there's something there. And then you all hosted a digital writing workshop. I forget when that was exactly, but um, yeah, that helped me, I think, draw out some inspo for, okay, what are things in the story that I want to capture? So I remember sharing like the scent of Nair, using Nair on my arm hair. And just moments like that, I was like, oh, that really evoked some emotion in people. Like, how can I reference that similarly in this piece that I want to write for my grandma? And so something that came up was, when she would always hot comb my hair in her kitchen growing up. And I was like, how can I mirror that similarly? And that was something that I added to my piece, just like remembering the scent of the hot comb on the stove and what that smelled like. So yeah, being able to insert myself in moments in community where y'all had curated the space already, and I'm like, I'm just gonna use this as fuel and as support. And then I showed up to the rough draft, which I believe was maybe a week or two before the final submission deadline. And I used that time to finalize like what I had already wrote. So I stayed the whole time. There also was other storytellers there, like that I learned that also were doing the same thing, using that time to finalize their submission. And I remember I submitted my story, I think at 11:59 exactly. But that's how it came to be. Like there was different moments in time where I really just wanted to be in community and not be alone, knowing that I was freshly grieving, and that really helped me. And my friend Paul texted me like once a week being like, where are you at? How are you feeling? Do you need a break? Yeah.
Love the journey.
Shout out. Yes, that's wonderful. And shout out to Paul. Shout out to
Shout out
Paul.
to
We
Paul.
all
And he
need.
was there at the show too. He was there at the show, which I'm so grateful that he was present in the audience. So
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, we all need that friend. We all need that specific friend that is like, hey, you know, where are we at with this? We know this is something that you should do. We know that it'll be healing in ways of sorts, which we hope it was for you. And that leads into my question as to what was healing about writing this story about your grandmother, and is there any advice that you could give to listeners about that are moving through grief about piecing together a story like this?
yeah, I'm big on pace. So that I find that pace follows me, whether it's getting to know people, whether it's dating. I very much am a person who goes at her own pace. So I've found that sometimes gets me in trouble, especially with work or deadlines and things like that. But pace is really important. So I think when it came to storytelling and writing this, just honoring that pace. So I was very aware that I was in a very vulnerable state and freshly grieving. And I've shared with my friends before that this is the first time that I've lost someone in my immediate family. Um, Growing up, like my parents were the young parents, my grandparents were the young grandparents. So I never experienced loss like this until my grandmother. And so, yeah, just keeping that awareness in mind, being kind to myself, being gentle to myself. And I also was like, you know what, if it comes close to submission time and it's just not on my heart to submit something, like that's okay. So I also was giving myself permission to just be okay with, if it comes, it comes, and if not, then there will be other moments that I can share this. Yeah.
Totally.
And
Beautiful
then
piece of
y'all
advice.
also mentioned a tip. I mean, I think something I haven't talked about just yet was I spent a lot of time sitting with audios of my grandmother. I have a lot of voicemails saved, and you'll see in my piece that I included one of her voicemails. And I was actually very scared to sit with that. I avoided listening back to her voicemails. But as soon as I did, I feel like that also unlocked something. I was like, it energized me. Yes, I did cry a lot, like hearing her voice again, but it also just gave me that little umph of, oh, I actually want to include one of these voicemails in my piece. And that was honestly my favorite part of sharing her story, was also being able to share her voice. So sometimes the things that scare us the most are also where there's opportunity to lean in and unlock further healing. That was the case for me.
100%. And that was such a powerful moment uh, for
Very.
everyone. Yeah, beautiful. Kat, for our last question for you, we are going to pull a card from our All Too Human conversation card deck. So if you remember, we include everybody that comes to the
Okay.
releases gets these conversation cards. So we
Yeah,
want you to pick
yeah.
a number between 1 and 87. And I'll read you the question.
69. And that was the age of my
69.
grandmother. Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about expressing vulnerability in love?
Hmm. I feel that, I mean, love and vulnerability, they're so interconnected. I I think love very much is a choice. And I think with vulnerability, that can be the case too. And I also just think about the moments where sometimes vulnerability comes up and we can't necessarily control it. Like there might be moments where our emotions are heightened, or we are scared to do the thing, say the thing, share the thing. And yeah, I really see that connected to love. And so Bell Hooks said something in her book around, yeah, like knowing love. I think something around like knowing death, you're able to know love further. And yeah, I think it's vulnerable to even admit that. So yeah, I think through vulnerability is how you can get closer to the act and choice of love.
Absolutely. I completely agree that it's two sides of the same coin. Um, Without it, I don't know how you know love without some level of vulnerability.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
beautiful answer, Kat.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you for not only submitting a story and being brave enough to read it on stage, but for also being a part of the craft and release community. Glenn and I like to say that you're stuck with us. So we
I mean,
we
we
very
saw
much
each other at
so.
Juneteenth, so absolutely.
I mean,
Yep.
yes, exactly. You're stuck with us. We so appreciate you being a part of our community, and also like going from coming to the first to performing at the third. This is a dream for us, truly.
Really
Yes, thank
is.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat.
Thank you so much.